Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the league. Mary Beth and I have been members of the league here in Grand Junction for, it seems like forever. And I want to start out by especially thanking the league for their help on Y&Z. Personally, I think that Y&Z are the most dramatic improvements in the way we govern ourselves in Colorado in many, many years. And I thought I would do two parts of this presentation. First, I would recap the key points in Y&Z, and then talk about what we need to do over the next year or so to make sure that Y&Z is successful. Tony, is that pretty much what your expectation is?
I mean, yes, I have to come back to the computer to talk to you. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, let me start by reminding everyone that when we put together Y&Z, we had 6 principles that we wanted to be, that we wanted to make sure were included in Y&Z. All of those ended up in the final product, and these are those 6 or 7 key points. First, and most important, maps should be drawn by a balanced commission, a commission composed equally of Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated. That's a big change. I don't believe any other state has gone as far as Colorado has gone in giving representation to the 39% of voters in Colorado who view themselves as unaffiliated. Secondly, we felt that the commission should not include party officials, elected officials, or lobbyists. We felt that maps should be presented to the commission and drawn by the nonpartisan staff that works at the General Assembly, not by the party. Because anyone who has looked at it knows that both parties have become very adept at drawing maps that favor their own interests. We felt that the work of the commissions should be governed by open meetings and open records requirements. It's our intent that all of the work of the commission be done openly and subject to public scrutiny. We felt that the commission should be guided by neutral criteria that do not favor either party. And finally, or not finally, but next last, we directed the commissions to create the maximum number of competitive districts. As a group, we have a strong belief that elected officials from safe districts are less likely to compromise and to work with members from the opposite party. We want to encourage compromise and cooperation, and frankly, this is one of our stated biases. We also ruled or wanted that decisions of the commission be made by a supermajority, at least 8 out of 12, so that no single person could become the kingpin. Thankfully, after many, many drafts, I think something in excess of 85 drafts, we came up with Y&Z. We presented them to the legislature. With almost no change, they referred them to the voters. And thankfully, over 70% of the voters in Colorado agreed that Y&Z were good policy, and they are now the law in Colorado. But what I want to tell you is that our work isn't done. We have to make sure, I think the league and all of us that worked on this project have to work that the commissions are implemented in the right way, and that we get a sufficient number of individuals applying the commission to make it function. I'd like to talk about both of those elements. Tony and I are watching the work of the legislature, and she may be more current on that than I am, but there is a bill presented to enact statutory changes that are necessary to make Y&Z work. And I've done some work in studying that bill, and frankly, I'm very, very pleased with it, with what I've seen so far. However, one of the things that we don't have on the bill yet is a fiscal bill, a decision by the legislature to appropriate sufficient funds to make the commission work. So what does that involve? It involves some personnel, some people that will be drawing these maps and staffing the commissions. I hope it involves some outreach that we get sufficient number of applicants. It involves purchasing the software that is necessary to make the maps and to make this process successful. And it's my understanding that the legislative staff at the Capitol has decided that it is appropriate that this activity be housed outside of the Capitol, away from the pressures that go with being in the Capitol. And that will come with some cost. There's another part of that discussion that I want everyone to be thinking about. I think it's important that we figure out some way to do outreach to the citizens of Colorado so that they know that the opportunity exists for them to apply to be members of these commissions. I'm personally thinking about public service announcements on television. I'm not real good at social media, but we should have a presence on social media. And we should do everything we can think of within reason to make sure that people know that this opportunity exists. The reason for that is, ultimately, we have to have a balanced commission. I think both parties know that with 4 unaffiliated chosen by lot from the number of unaffiliated that apply, that there's an opportunity here for them to manipulate the system. I think we've all heard anecdotes that that's already underway. I think it's our job to make sure that we get as many truly unaffiliated applicants so that, in fact, this process creates a balanced commission and gives it every chance to be successful. I'll stop there. My thoughts right now. Tony?
Yeah, our next speaker is here, Attorney General Phil Buescher. And so I'm sorry we have to cut you short. And I know, we cut you short at the beginning and short at the end. But
I am always willing to give time to Phil Buescher.
But thank you very much, and thank you for being patient with us, and we'll do something again.
Thank you.